Welcome to the podcast today. And today I'm going to be talking about shamanic energy medicine and what that is. So I'm going to tell you more about what it is. I'll give you a little bit about its history, how I got into it, my initial experiences at training for it, and I'm going to give you a laundry list of the various types of methods that we can use to help you heal. A little bit more about why I'm talking to you about this. I want to start out with a disclaimer. I am a Midwestern woman who grew up in the 60s and the 70s. So a shaman wasn't something I had ever heard of, maybe barely heard of. And I would guess most of the people in my community hadn't heard of a shaman either. And many of them still haven't, or maybe know the term kind of loosely. When I moved away from Wisconsin, even like a chiropractor or an acupuncturist, they were still considered a bit voodoo. So I didn't grow up with any of this in my knowledge base. And for those of you who have grown up, you're likely going to find this podcast a pretty rudimentary explanation of what it is. So forgive me, but I'm sharing my perspective and trying to go back in time of what was going on with me as I progressed through this. And yeah, it's been baby steps for me, coming from 0 and going to probably at least 60 now. And for those of you who are my fellow shaman brothers and sisters, particularly the Western trained shaman versus those who grew up in indigenous cultures where shamanism is in your blood, again, this is my take on it as a way to translate to others who aren't in the know. So again, I will please ask you to provide me a little grace because I'm still remembering. So with that as the backdrop, what even got me into this? So it started when I was moving to Bend, Oregon, and suddenly I was thrust into a caregiving role for my then husband. During that time, my little dog, Bear, this wonderful Shih Tzu with the personality of a Labrador, started acting weird. He was suddenly really jumpy and frightened. I would, for example, be just walking him down the street in the quiet neighborhood that we lived in, and, maybe I had my flip-flops on, and maybe I tripped a little bit over a little crack. Like, no big deal. My feet weren't anywhere near him. I had done that years before, and he didn't react. But suddenly, it was almost like a cougar was attacking him. He would, try to get away so much. So it was alarming to me. I felt bad for him. And caring for my husband, there was a team of people, including me, that were on it and connected to his healing. But the option for the dog was to take him to the vet. And the vet took tests and said that Bear was just fine. But he wasn't fine. So I tried another vet, and that vet gave me the same results. It wasn't anything that they could diagnose that was a problem for him. Yet Bear was acting very frightened and jumpy, and it was getting worse. So I was just having some tea one morning with a girlfriend, and she suggested that I consider working with a woman who could heal dogs remotely. So you just call her on the phone, have a little chat with her, and then miraculously she can heal your dog. What? Really? But I was so concerned at this point that I just thought, whatever, for $150, which was the fee at that time, I was going to try anything. And so I did. So the first session with Catherine was about an hour long, where we just talked about my background and, what was going on a bit and Bear's history. And at the end of the call, she declared that this problem really isn't about the dog. It's about me. Because you and your dog are cosmically connected. So he was just reflecting what was going on with me in my life. So she then flipped it and said, so what are you frightened and jumpy about? Well, as you can imagine, I just burst into tears at that moment, knowing that it was all related to everything that we were going through in our household, right? I had a very ill husband who was deteriorating and basically looked like he was dying day after day. And I was jumpy about that. Of course, I was frightened. Of course, I was like waiting for the next severe thing to happen, waiting for the next rush to the emergency room to happen. And so her explanation that this really wasn't about my dog, it was about me, that began my energy healing over the phone. At the same time this was going on, the nurses at the hospital where we were making regular visits for my husband, they diffused essential oils in the room, and that was a huge turning point in his recovery. So on top of that, I had also decided to take a 5-day training course in past life regressions. You can listen all about that in the first handful of my podcasts. So all of this was just happening simultaneously. After a few sessions with Catherine, I was super curious about what she was doing during the hour-long sessions. Because basically what it felt like is we would have a brief chat up front, and then she would just say, okay, like just relax in a chair and tell me what you experience, once I tell you that I'm ready to hear that. And, if you fall asleep, no big deal, like just chill out. And what it sounded like to me was it sounded like she was napping on the other side of the phone. And then every once in a while, it sounded like she was maybe moving a stapler on her desk. Like that was kind of the envision that I had. But Bear started getting better, and I started getting better. So I recall an early session when she asked me how I was feeling. And I said, I was feeling a little sad and disappointed. And she was the one who explained to me that sad and disappointment, those are emotions. Those aren't feelings. So she asked again, what are you feeling? Well, given her definition of feelings weren't emotions, I was a little dumbfounded. I realized everything that I wanted to say, to explain to her how I was feeling, it was all emotion. So I couldn't quite grasp, what did she mean? And she just kept repeating, a feeling. What was I feeling? What was I feeling in my body? Again, there was total confusion on my part based on my growing up. What did she mean, a feeling in my body? I didn't have any pain. So what else could anybody ever want to be feeling in their body? I closed my eyes and I tried to see what I was feeling in my body. And I slowly kind of thought, hey, maybe my hands are tingling a bit. So I floated that answer out to her to see if that was what she was looking for. And yep, sure enough, that's what she wanted to hear more of. Those were feelings. Things like hot, cold, a pit in my stomach, my throat felt closed off, shaking, wobbling. That's what she was getting at. And, again, I was a little bit dumbfounded. I had never, at that point I was in my 50s, and I had never been asked about how I was feeling in my body. Unless it was pain related, right? If you'd go to the doctor and you hurt your foot, then they'd ask about how your foot felt. But I didn't even know that we were supposed to try to feel sensations in our body. And then it instantly went to, what did all of it mean anyway? So what if my hands were tingling? What did that mean? Or what if my throat felt tight and stuck? What did that mean? So more frustration came when she explained that I would need to find out for myself what those things meant, because all of us had kind of different bodies and they worked differently and they informed us each very personally. So, this was confusing, but it started to pique my interest. Did other people feel their bodies and try to understand what was going on for them? And what did it mean that my hands were tingling and all the rest? So while I worked with Catherine and got better and better, and Bear got better and better, and I accessed my feelings more and more, and began to learn what the sensations in my body meant for me and my life, I had gone to the past life regression training, and I had been practicing on friends and family. And I was getting to a point that I thought, this is actually helping my friends and family. So maybe I can offer my services to outside people as well. And my little business side, because as I say, I'm a recuperating former retired businesswoman. So my little business side told me that if I offered past life regressions, I should have one other skill set that I can offer to clients. And because I was going through all this energy training with Catherine, and it was unbelievably helpful, and I did not understand what was going on behind the scenes, I decided I would dive into energy medicine. And, she was on the phone, remotely accessing my energy field and then working with it to heal me. She would clean out my chakras. She would do breath work. She would do all sorts of things that I had never been exposed to before. So I thought, I would like to learn about this, and I'd like to learn and then maybe get trained at the same time. So that's what I decided to do. I would offer energy medicine. Now I live in Bend, Oregon, and I have learned that people around here were far more in tune with energy medicine than I was in coming from the Midwest. It wasn't some weird oddball thing to talk about or mention. And a chunk of people here not only knew what it was, but they actually did it. I quickly learned that Reiki, for example, was a form of energy medicine. And Reiki I had heard of. I didn't understand it, but I had heard of it. So when I decided to also get into energy medicine, I thought I needed something to differentiate myself. We had so many people in town that were providing energy medicine as a service. So I just kind of bumped into the shamanic energy medicine term. And I just instantly in my little brain said, yeah, I'm going to do that. So still completely not understanding what a shaman was, and what shamanic energy medicine was, or even really grasping what energy medicine was. I was just so compelled that I needed to do this training that I literally did a Google search and just signed up. I went online, signed up for a 30-day, 300-hour intensive course with one of the best schools, and I signed up to go to Joshua Tree a few months later to attend. I found out later as I signed up, they contacted me right away because never had they had somebody just Google search and then sign up for their program. Most of the other people would call and have very intelligent questions, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was just following my gut, which I've learned is a brilliant way to live, and signed up. And that month literally changed my life. So my approach was still very basic as I was packing up the car to drive to Joshua Tree for the month. My thought process was a little bit skeptical. And I thought, okay, I've been haunted by this pain, this physical pain in my SI joint, in my kind of upper hip, lower back on the left side. And it had been for maybe a decade or more. So I thought, okay, I will be a believer if I go through this shamanic energy medicine and that pain goes away. So it was, now in hindsight, I see it was a very low bar, and it was a physical bar because that's what my background was, right? That's kind of what I knew about. I knew about having physical pain removed from your body, and mostly about the physical body. But what I learned is shamanism is so much more. So let's talk a little bit about what is a shaman. Shamans have been practicing this ancient wisdom all over the globe for probably since the beginning of time. They were first mentioned, by the people who write things and talk about things, so usually pretty Western people, in Siberia. but they are found throughout Asia, South America, and beyond. And a shaman, in just really basic terms, it's typically someone who walks between the visible and the invisible world. So the spirit world and the earthly world. Many shaman also work with altered states of consciousness, sometimes through the help of plant medicine. And personally, that is something that I'm not into just because it doesn't speak to me, but many of my fellow shaman brothers and sisters are into that element as well. There's been a trend in more recent decades to connect the Western world with the indigenous shaman medicines. So people like me who want to learn to help to heal people using the shamanic ways are showing up more and more. And that there's a specific intent to connect kind of the Eastern type of medicines with the Western medicines. So my training also included lots of scientific information connecting the neurosciences, brain health, the physical health of the body. What you put in your gut impacts the brain, impacts the spirit, impacts the energy body, all of that. So we focus on healing the energy field when we're talking about energy medicine. And the energy field is all around you. Everything has an energy field. Plants have an energy field. Humans have an energy field. Even like yogurt has an energy field. And if you can keep that energy field around you and properly nourish your physical body and your brain, then you're likely to have a much healthier and more pleasant human experience. So that's just some kind of basic background on shamanism. There's a lot more experienced people and a lot more in-depth expert explanations that you can go and search out. But that's, I think, gives you a base for it. So during the 30 days of shaman school, as I like to call it, we learned 26 different ways to help people heal. And so from a technical term, we actually don't heal people. You and your body already know how to heal yourself. We just can help you remember, and we can help you get out of your own way so that your body can kick into its own healing. So just think about like when you cut yourself, right? Your body heals it. Your body knows how to heal a cut or all sorts of different things that happen. And so it's just a matter of learning and remembering, because we know in our cells, we already know these things, more that I learned at shaman school. So it's just a way of remembering. The teaching method was nothing like I experienced in Western school or college. There was no syllabus, no overhead projector, no chalkboard, no workbook. You didn't even know how to spell the words that they were saying. But they would show you how to do something, and then just you were to go do it. So it was really a different learning process for me. But as I said before, it was the most impactful 30 days, 300 hours of my life. I started seeing spirit, and that's just a whole other story for the next podcast. But I felt like I was a total neophyte. I was a complete beginner. So after the training, I walked out with 26 different methods, different tools that I can use to help you heal. And if you want a list of those, you can go to our website, cahyacenter.org, and there's a list of them. But I want to kind of go through them right here to give you a little bit more information so you can see what are ways that shaman can help. Something that's called an illumination tends to be the foundational healing that we start with people who come for healing. It basically clears out energy that no longer serves you, and it brings in more of the energy that serves your highest good. Power bands are one of the initiations that we received while we were going through our training. And they're bands of power that you imagine around your physical body, which give you strength and protection. And not only did we receive them during our training, but we can also give them to others. I actually just reactivated power bands for a client the other day. Once you've got your power bands, it's good to do regular rituals around them to keep them strong and activated so we can teach people how to do that. Extractions are another way that we can remove energy from your physical body that no longer serves you. Let me do a little segue here to give you a little bit about the belief system behind this. The basic belief is that we're all born these little perfect balls of love and light when we're babies. And then typically around the age of 5 or so, we realize something happens and we realize that this world isn't always safe for us. Maybe something traumatic happened. Maybe you got lost in the store and you couldn't find your mom. Maybe something terrible and horrible happened to you. But this is a part of the human experience that I have actually never met anybody who didn't have this happen to them. They have some kind of trauma that happens. And when it happens, because we're just little children who rely on other humans who are older than us to take care of us and keep us safe and fed and clothed and protected, we learn that the world isn't safe, but we also feel like we can't fix it ourselves. So we take a little part of that little beautiful ball of light and energy and we tuck it away for safekeeping. And so we kind of realize, okay, my physical body isn't necessarily safe, but I'm going to keep this part of my soul safe. And we tuck it away. So we kind of do a little separation of our soul at that point so that we can get through life. And then as we grow up, and mostly because many of us in the Western culture don't know about this, we get older and we continue to behave like that little scared child anytime our fear is triggered by something that happens. And so something happens in the outside world, it triggers us to remember, oh my gosh, we're not safe. And then we behave in a way that maybe isn't really suiting our higher self. Some of us live our entire lives that way and never even stop to consider why do we do what we do? Why does this make me upset? Why am I so pissed off that guy cut me off in traffic? Right? That can be a little bit crazy making. I'm just driving down the road listening to my music and somebody cuts me off and I might just completely flip out. That is worth thinking about. In my world, that's worth pondering. Why does that? That person didn't threaten my life. That person seems to be in a hurry. That person didn't pull a gun at my head. But some of us behave in a way that is the reaction, our reaction, and we don't pause to think about it. But those folks are typically what we call unconscious people, the ones that just keep living. They just kind of keep going through. They never stop to ponder. They don't question. And they go about their lives and just live that way. You can live your whole life that way. There's other people who go about living their life and doing and living and doing and living. And they start to notice that, wait a minute, either they question their behavior or there's patterns that show up in their life. Maybe they have the same boyfriend that constantly, it's like, this kind of guy is the guy I'm always attracted to or that's attracted into my life. And so here's how my romantic story goes. And then this kind of guy shows up. And then I marry a guy like that. And I divorce a guy like that. And I marry a guy like that. And I divorce a guy. So maybe they start to recognize that's a pattern. That's a pattern that I have, that there's always maybe an alcoholic person in my life. And so they start to question, and then they start to learn. And that's what we call awakening. And as you start to question those things and start to learn, you may begin to wonder, how can I fix that? That basic wounding we call core wounding, that trauma you experienced as a child that then now creates this behavior that you're triggered into. And that then elicits people to maybe go get healing, and maybe not in the way that the Western medicine heals. So that process of healing can be extremely hard. So going to a shaman for healing is not a picnic. It can uncover some deeply disturbing memories. It can uncover some strong emotions and feelings. It can uncover realizations about you and things that you've done that maybe you're not proud of anymore. So it can be painful, much like if you need to have, shoulder surgery. It's no picnic to go through that kind of healing. But when you do decide to dive in and have that healing done, then when you get to the other side, life becomes pretty darn amazing and beautiful. So yes, of course, once you're through initial healing, you get to the other side and things are better. There's often more healing to be done, more fine tuning, and you still experience life's ups and downs, of course, but you're in a different place then, and you react differently, and your triggers trigger less of an emotional response in you, and you understand intellectually that, wow, that guy cut me off, and that trigger really has nothing to do with him. It's all about me. So when the new love in your life says something that pisses you off, instead of you going, you said this and this, it's more like, oh, you said that, so I need to go heal me because I'm triggered now. So sorry, I need to take a little break. I need to do some self-healing, and I'll inform you later when I figure it out. So it's a different way to live. So let me give you an example, a personal example. My core wounding happened probably before I was born. My mother was borderline personality disorder, and as I've learned that she was institutionalized when she was pregnant with me, and I think it was more than once. So as my primary caregiver, it feels to me more like I came into this world and likely knew in the womb that this was not going to be a safe world for me. And my father worked a lot, so I was kind of thrust into this childhood where I needed to fend for myself and raise myself, like pretty much right out the gate. My sister is 18 months older than me, and her experience in our home is very different than mine was. So that's another element that comes into play. We all experience life differently. I am a highly sensitive person, an HSP as it's called now. So for me, growing up in an environment where I had to take care of myself and I had to fend for myself and I had to feed myself at a very young age, it was a negative experience. Others might not find it that way. And since my parents already basically had a baby that they were dealing with, and then I came along, it could have been that whatever parenting skills my mother had, she was able to direct toward my sister. But then I came and just totally tipped the scales and made it impossible. And I also believe that I chose that family to be born into. I chose the parents. I chose those trials and tribulations. And I also truly believe that everybody is trying their best with what they have. So I do believe my parents were trying their best. I have no ill will toward them. But at the same time, it was a negative experience for me. So whatever the details and facts were behind the scenes, my experience of it was that I grew up essentially without a mother. If you read books about daughters who grew up without mothers, that's totally me. And that informed who I've become. I've learned that school, for example, was a godsend for me. There was a place that I could go and spend hours every day where adults were all around me who cared about me and paid attention to me. And these were also adults who had knowledge that I wanted to have and I wanted to absorb. And they had personality characteristics that I wanted to adopt. And so I thrived at school. I signed up for everything. I attended everything. I was after school all the time trying to learn and absorb. But still, that core wounding that I had before birth was still stuck in my body. So I learned how to take care of myself. I was fiercely independent, but I also didn't trust anybody to take care of me because few people ever had, especially behind the scenes. So of course, there were some positive qualities in my life that came out of that, some positive lessons that I took. But there were also some lessons that I took that really weren't serving my highest good. Learning to not trust anybody to help me or to not trust anybody to take care of me. I still struggle with that today. And those are lessons that, really aren't serving me. So that's my path of ongoing healing. So all of this is what I started to learn as I went through this shamanic energy medicine training. And frankly, it made a lot of sense to me. It rang true as I was learning it. And because we would practice all these methods on each other during the training, the teachers would do it. They'd say, go do it to each other. All of this old energy that I had tucked away into my body began to release. So the part of my soul that I had tucked away, probably even before I was born, was reunited. And I was getting whole again during this shamanic energy. And with that came tons of tears and gnashing of the teeth. Prior to the training, I rarely cried or showed my deeply felt emotions to anyone. Most of my friends and family had never seen me cry. Yet during the first week of training, I was a complete puddle. I even expressed to the teacher that I wasn't really sure I could do this kind of work for others because it was bringing up so much emotion in me. I kept envisioning I'm going to be such a basket case that my clients are going to just get up and start consoling me instead of me being able to help them. But at the same time, I knew that this was something I had to do. This was something I had to learn and that I had to do to help others. So I stuck with it. So, okay, done with the segue. I'm back now to the 26 different shamanic ways that I can now help heal people. And extractions are another way. It helps get out thicker energies out of the body. Energy that's stuck in the body can look basically three different ways. It can look like air or maybe smoke-like, so more of a gas kind of a form. It can be liquid or it can be harder. And when it's more of a harder thing, that an extraction can be the method that removes those harder chunks of energy that get stuck. Soul retrievals also are a method that we use, and they take people through the process of going back and reconnecting with that part of their soul that they tucked away for safekeeping when they were children. We can also provide health coaching to people because the energy body is closely connected to the physical body. So it's important to keep the energy body healed, because if you're out of alignment, mind, body, spirit, then that's what creates unease in the body or dis-ease in the physical body, which is called disease in our world. But if I heal the energy body and you are putting things in your body all day that are abusive to that physical body, maybe you're pounding it with chemicals or alcohol or drugs or sugar all day long, that healing that I'm doing on the energy body, it's not going to last for long. So for me, I'd already been transitioned to a much more clean diet before I went to the training. And at the training itself, the only food you were served was on their diet. So it was very, very clean, zero sugar, etc. I think on the very last day they gave us cookies with sugar in them, and we all just went bananas for it because we hadn't had sugar for 30 days. But we learned not only about what you ingest and how that helps your physical body, but how that also what you put into your gut impacts your brain, and then how your brain impacts your connection to spirit. And just how that whole mind, body, spirit thing is all connected. So we came out and were able to help people with their health as well, their physical health. We also learned how to do something called decoupling. That's a typical thing that you would do along with illumination during a first healing session. We learned something called the 3-card story. It's a method where you have a client pull 3 cards. Usually I have them pull it from a tarot deck. And these cards have all these beautiful pictures, intriguing, interesting pictures on them. And then the client writes a story. And what they write can help them dive into their subconscious beliefs. And sometimes our belief systems are part of the stuck energy. So uncovering those beliefs and then putting them into their proper perspective can be very helpful. We also learned how to use the I Ching. The I Ching is an ancient Chinese book. Some say it's the first book ever written, and it answers oracle type questions. I use the I Ching regularly in my life now to answer questions and provide divination. So it's kind of a peek into the future. We learned other divination methods as well, like throwing stones. It's another way where you devise a very specific question and then interpret through the stones what the answer is. We did a lot of work with chakras, and I know how to do harmonic chakra attunement, often connecting with others to do that. We learned all sorts of rituals like full moon fire ceremonies and new moon fire ceremonies. Today, while I'm recording this, it is a new moon. So today I will be doing a fire ceremony tonight, and I have done these fire ceremonies on every full moon and every new moon. So twice a month I do fire ceremonies for the past 3+ years. I even have teepees on my property, so I can do the fire ceremonies on a snowy day outside here in Central Oregon, or sometimes on a middle of a summer day when we're like a tinderbox and you can no longer have a fire. One spark can create those big wildfires that you hear about. So I do those rituals, and we can help people learn how to do those as well. Sometimes friends will call me and say they need a fire ceremony, and so they'll come out for just a fire ceremony healing. We also learned how to provide other rites. I mentioned already the power bands, but there are other rites that we can pass down to others. So there's a beautiful rite of the womb ceremony for women. Men participate as well as support and protection. And it's a beautiful ceremony to remind women that our wombs, it's where life itself is created. And we need to remove any beliefs that women might have about the womb being meant for pain or any kind of suffering. And there's other rites of protection that we can provide as well. We learned how to cut cords. So cords maybe are cords to belief systems or people or entities or thoughts or more. It's just some kind of a cord connection that's to something that doesn't serve us anymore and isn't really helping us with our soul's destiny. Maybe you have an ancestor or a parent or a person in your past who you need to fully break away from, and who you've still got an attachment to. So we can cut those cords so that you stay in your own energy and you're filled with energy that's focused on what your purpose in this lifetime is. Are you getting sick of this list yet? It goes on, but wait, there's more. We can take you on a journey, or we can journey for you. So I tend to have clients journey to find their spirit animals. Or I also do this for groups sometimes, Sometimes people want me to come to a yoga class and do a spirit animal journey. Or maybe join somebody at their campfire and do that. Sometimes I'll journey for clients to the upper world or to the lower world. And in shamanic terms, the lower world is not like hell or anything scary like damnation stuff, but that's to the world of medicines. Or I can guide others to those worlds. Sometimes we help people find their destinies in the journeys and so on. So journeying is a big tool we can use. Word deconstruction is another method. This is kind of cool because you begin with a word and then you just let yourself say it, and you emote and you move your body around and you let that word morph into more and more words until you feel that you're just kind of complete. And eventually you come to this final new word, and often it allows you to gain some realization and awakening about the meaning of that word and its true meaning for you in your life. We know how to do indigenous alchemy, where we can radically transition elements of yourself that you want to change now. We do things called huacas. So I used this technique on myself a few months ago. I turned 60 in March of 2021. That was a time when I needed some big changes to happen in my life. And I did a huaca to clear out blockages and to shake things up and to clear more and more of my path. I needed to open more and more space. For me right now in my life, my focus is in calling in true love into my life. So as you know from my past, that hasn't gone that well because I haven't allowed, I haven't really had that trusting perspective with people. I haven't let people help me and be there for me. So now I've got a lot of that healing done, but I want to call in that deep, romantic, meaningful love connection. And so I used a huaca to do the indigenous alchemy so that I could clear that path even more. We also can do death rites. So this is a way to free the energy body from the physical body when somebody is near death and then when they die, so that that separation can be clean. And we can also do surrogate death rites for somebody who has died. Maybe they died, eons ago, and you feel like maybe they're stuck, or you've been told that they're stuck between worlds, or maybe you've got some ancient ancestor that is coming back to you constantly. And so we can help guide them so that they can get to their next life and move on. We can also clear space, clearing energy that isn't meant for us and our highest good. We can do that in your house, in your office, in your room, maybe your apartment. I did that recently. A client called a few months ago who had funky energy, and they thought maybe some entities and beings in their home that really were, messing things up with them and their children. So I can go in and clear that space for them. So how's that for a list of tools in your toolkit? And that's just the most basic shamanic training. There are much more senior level types of training as well, but you get the idea. So I have spent this podcast unveiling more for you who maybe didn't know what shamanic energy medicine is and how we can help people heal. Hopefully today you have a little bit more of an intellectual understanding of what it is and how it can help people. As always, sending you love and light. Namaste.